Hi, I'm Patryk, and I'm a full-stack JavaScript developer, and that's the first conference when I don't feel awkward telling this, that I'm a full-stack in JavaScript, which is cool. I'm also a product designer and remote work advocate. I also work remotely for over 6 years now, and I sometimes stutter. And I tell you that because, first of all, I might stutter during this presentation, so don't feel awkward about that. And the other thing is that even though c- communications communication skills are very important in the remote work environment, I can still manage and be very successful as a remote worker. So before we start, maybe we should define what remote work is actually. So I looked up some definition in the Cambridge Dictionary, English Dictionary, and they wrote that it's a noun that describes a situation in which an employee works mainly from home and communicates with the company by email and telephone. That sounds pretty outdated to me, so let's delve into that. First of all, employee. I think uh, in in the times of the so-called gig economy, we are not only speaking about employees, but are also about freelancers, contractors, consultants. Another thing is home. I don't. I mean, I, I know a lot of remote workers, and some of them work from co-working spaces. Some of them work from their lovely coffee shops. Some of them work from beaches or from some exotic places while traveling. So it's not really true that you work mainly or only from home. Communicates with company by email. Okay, that happens still from time to time. But telephone, well, I haven't used telephone for like 4 years now. I mean, in the business context or in the working environment. So I kind of reshaped this definition, and I would say it's a situation in which a person works from wherever they want and communicate with the company or the client mostly through online communicators like Slack or Zoom. So there are also a couple of terms that often get mixed with the remote work term. First one is workation. It's a term where it's a situation when you go for a vacation and you take work with you, and you're able to like maybe travel and rest a little bit, but you're still working, and it's like usually for a very short period of time, like a week or maybe two. There's home office, and that's one of the things that a lot of companies are trying to offer now as some sort of perk or benefit. And it means that you have an option to work from home like once a week or maybe a couple of times in a month. And there's a remote work where you work remotely all the time and you're not constrained by any rules, and you don't need to show up in the office. And there's also digital nomadism, which is like an upgraded version of remote work where you don't have one location, and when you travel most of the time, switching places and countries every couple of weeks or months. So in today's presentation, we'll speak about remote work here. So it's about a situation when you are working remotely all the time. So who works remotely? Oh, okay, quite a lot of people, I think. So according to the Stack Overflow survey from this year, 12% of software developers work remotely. So you might ask why remote work is great for programmers. First of all, you have access to global opportunities. You're not limited to working only in the local companies, and you don't need to relocate to get some more interesting projects. You potentially have higher salary because you can work from Poland and work for companies from United States or England or from whatever place you want. And it also, I think, works even if you are a remote worker in United States, because you can, for example, live in a more cheaper place, like, let's say, Chicago, and work for companies from New York or San Francisco. You have flexible schedule, since most of the distributed teams are spread across different time zones. So you need to set your own schedule, and usually nobody pays attention about the hours you work from. You don't need to commute, which is, I think, one of the biggest benefits, because you don't waste time. And also, since remote work communication is mostly asynchronous, there aren't that many meetings in the remote work, so you also save extra time. And you have, of course, a lot of freedom that allows you to travel and live from different places, and like set your own schedule, design your own office, and work from place that you want. So you don't need to trust me. I also have some example from my LinkedIn feed where one guy has just started to be a remote worker, and he shares some insights. So he's sending less emails, spending less time on the meetings, and he even managed to save some time and go for a run. So once more, according to the Stack Overflow survey, there are 40% of software developers would like to work remotely, and that's a great information for our companies, I think, because remote work can be also very beneficial for the companies. So one of the perks is that you have access to the global talent pool. You are not limited only to finding employees in the local area. You have lower costs because you don't need to care about the office. You don't need to spend money on some relocation packages for the employees. You don't need to care about Wednesdays with fruits or beer Fridays or stuff like that. You have flexible workforce, because if you set all the processes and communication to be remote first, it's really easy to hire some freelancers to jump into the project and help you out if you need that. You have goal-oriented work, so you probably don't need to care about people spending 8 hours in the office, but you're more focused on goal delivery, so the project is going fast forward. You have internally motivated team also, because people who work remotely are usually self-starters, and they're able to manage themselves, and their motivation comes from the internals, I would say. And you can be an early adopter in a trend that is called future of work, because more and more companies are going to become remote first or remote friendly, and you can embrace it now. And when the time hits where most of the people will be working remotely. You will have your own processes. You will have experience running such company. And in the end, corporations or remote teams in denial, I would say, because if you think about that, you have like a company that's spread across different countries or places with distributed teams working in different locations. So big companies are already somehow distributed teams. The only gap that they need to cross is allowing their employees to work from a place they want to work from. Same applies for software houses, because mostly you do work for some clients from United States or from other countries. So so you're spread from the client, and you're kind of a distributed team already. So there are some qualities of distributed team that you can look for, and that I think that make the distributed team a good team. First one is trust over control. I think that's the most important thing, because you need to trust your employees and trust people that you work with, that they will do their work. And like, it's really important when you work remotely, because you don't see those people in the office, and you might not feel that you control them. So trusting them that they will do the job is very important. Another thing is asynchronous, because most of the communication is asynchronous. Then you need to embrace all these. You need to embrace the style of the communication to help with that. So the last project I worked on, we had a team distributed between Australia, United States, both East and West Coast, and also Poland and South America. So we are like spread apart, I think like 14 hours from each other. So like you need to be ready for that you can write a message and get a response from other people after a couple of hours or on the next day. So one of the popular problems is that people like to write to you and start with "Hi, how are you doing?" and they are waiting for a response before asking the question. So one thing to fix that is getting straight to the point and asking the question in a way that will help the other person to answer it. Another thing is transparency over politics. So you should make most of the things transparent in the company and accessible to all of the people, so they don't need to ask for the access and waste their time waiting for this access. Work over meetings, that like since you don't need to spend like 8 hours in one place, you are more goal oriented, and you just work and like don't waste time speaking and meeting with people. Self-starters over managers. So as I mentioned before, you should look for self-starters, for people who can manage themselves. And thanks to that, you probably don't need that much of a managers in the company. And getting stuff done over hours in the office, which I've already covered, I think. So according to some research, the average worker is only productive for 2 hours, like more or less 3 hours a day. And those are statistics about the office work. So like I would say that mostly office teams aren't that productive. And even though you have all the control over them, that you can see if they work or not, they still are very unproductive. So maybe letting people work from home, where if they reach the goal, they can have free time. It's a better idea than to waste 5 hours of unproductivity in the office every day. Okay, so maybe some exciting topic or interesting topic to you about how to find remote work. One of the ways is to just become a freelancer, and there are some freelance platforms like Freelancer or Upwork, but actually I haven't found any pros of those. There are mostly cons, like low rates and big competition, and you mostly compete over the price and not necessarily the quality or the experience. But there are also some vetted freelance platforms like TopTal, Arc, Pilot, Xteam, and so on. The pros are that you have a lot of freedom thanks to them, that you can choose which project you would like to work on. Usually you have high quality clients with good rates, and finding the client and the work and handling all the client processes like payments or some issues is done by these platform and not you. The cons is that usually the process of getting into this platform is quite difficult and quite long. And even though if you go through this process, you don't have any employment guarantee. So you can be part of the platform, invest the time, but still not get any work or projects from them. And you're also platform dependent. So if the platform decides to cross you out, you are left alone without job or any new project. So it's good to diversify. So I'm part of multiple platforms. So I have these safety that even that I'm not dependent on only one company. And I would like to highlight TopTal here because that was the first platform I got into, and they have very strict vetting process, and they're also pretty well known. So once I got into TopTal, other platforms started to approach me and invite me to their platforms without the extra vetting process. They just trusted that TopTal did a good job and just put me as a part of the platform. And also, I'd say they're the most professional platform that I worked with. So thumbs up for them. Another way is finding a remote first company. There are different companies. Some of the big ones are GitHub, Stripe, Automatic, who is responsible for creating WordPress, Dribble, Buffer, Basecamp, Sketch. There are also some Polish companies like Nozbe or iRunning. The process is that you have no middleman and you work with a company that has a very remote first approach, and they all their culture is based upon that. So you can work with like-minded people, while in the with the freelance platforms you usually work on some smaller projects with clients that just need some extra workforce, and they not necessarily understand the remote first culture. And you have all the perks and benefits of being an employee. The con is that there is a huge competition. And usually I've seen recrutations to remote first companies that there were like hundreds of applications for each place, which is quite unusual for a software developer work, right? There's a package for that. There's a GitHub repo that you can go to. There are listed like hundreds of remote first companies and some other places where you can find remote work. So remote work isn't always so perfect, and there are some common problems that you can face. One of the biggest, or the one that is mentioned the most, is isolation and loneliness. But there are some things that you can help with that and solve this problem. Like you can meet with friends. Like you don't need to meet with the coworkers. If you have friends, you can meet with them and have the social interactions that every human being needs. You can also go to meetups and meet some like-minded people who are also passionate about, for example, software development or anything that's interesting to you. You can work from a co-working space and be surrounded by other people who work in a similar fashion to you. You can find a social hobby and engage with people doing fun things. And you can hang out with coworkers on audio or video calls while working, so you can like kind of feel that you're almost in the office and you can discuss and joke around. Another problem is that there's a you can jump into a poor work-life balance, because since your schedule is very flexible and you have a lot of freedom, you might feel that you're all the time in the work and that you need to like be constantly online. So a good idea is to have some rituals to transition between work and life. For example, I like to start my work with a cup of coffee and a cake, and if I end my work, I usually go for a walk to like, and it helps it helps to tell my to tell my body and brain that that my state changes and that I'm not working anymore. I recently heard some term that work-life blending, which is the opposite of work-life balance, and it means that those people say that since it's hard to not think about your life problems during the work and your work problems during the leisure time, there's no point in building a work-life balance, so you should embrace work-life blending, which is to me very very bad approach, because it's really important for remote workers to have these separation between work and life, and you shouldn't listen to those people. And actually, I would encourage you to embrace work-life and sleep balance, because nowadays we live in the times where people sleep less and less, and sleep is really important for yes, thank you. And sleep is very important for your well-being, for resting, and it helps also to be more productive in the work, because if you're tired, you're less productive and you work longer hours, which is like a vicious circle. Another good idea is to find a computer-free hobby. To me, it's kite surfing. So doing some physical activities that help your mind rest and make your body tired are great for that. And even though remote works comes with usually with some flexible schedule, it might be a good idea to set your working hours. If I need it, I sometimes tell myself that I end my working day at 4 p.m. and no matter what, even if I'm in the middle of the task, I just close my computer and transition into leisure time. Which is like, at first it might be strange to you that you're cutting the job in the middle, but in the long term, it's a really good idea, and it like helps you be in the end more productive, I would say. There are some distractions that come with the remote work. It can be some other people in the co-working space. It might be some distractions from home and environment, like the need to clean up the home, or maybe some kids that or kids or your wife that doesn't understand that you're working, and they like try to nag you even though you are working. So a good idea is once more to set your working hours and communicate them to other people, so they know that from, let's say, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. you're at work, and you shouldn't be distracted. I never tried it, but I've heard it's great, like trying Pomodoro technique. So the idea is that you work for 20 or 25 minutes, and then you have 5 minutes of break, and it helps you to get focused on smaller tasks. The one thing I use is using post-it notes. At the end of each day, I write down 3 things that I would like to work on or accomplish on the next day. And when I start my working day on the next day, I know what I need to do. So I don't need to I'm not distracted by some emails or other things. Sometimes it's also good to turn on airplane or don't disturb mode. And having some dedicated space to work from, like a dedicated room or area in your home, a co-working space, or maybe a favorite coffee shop. And since remote work comes with a lot of freedom, you don't need to work from one place all the time. You can switch those places. And I usually work from all the places. Like I work one day from a coffee shop, the other day from a co-working space, and the other day from home. Another problem is poor communication, which comes with a few things. One is that since most of the communication is going through online tools like Slack, it tends to be emotionless, and it's like really hard to tell what emotions people or what people want to express when they write only. So a great idea is to use emojis and GIFs to like express the emotions. Embracing the asynchronous style of communication. So writing, formulating questions or messages in a way that if a person will read it in few hours, they can respond to you, and you will get the full answer that you needed. using other means of communication if needed. So usually, if there's some problem between front end and back end, and we need to fix some bugs or maybe adjust the API response, it's a good idea to do some video call or screen sharing, or maybe some even pair programming to resolve the issue in a faster way. There are also a lot of myths and reality about the works, but since we don't have that much time today, you can just watch my other presentation from Mobile Warsaw. So that's all. Thank you.